This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
5 Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Danny, welcome to 5 Questions.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here. I wanted to start off. Why were you originally drawn into the systems of crime and violence, and how were you able to transition into a new life as a Hollywood actor?
You know what? I grew up with a mentor that happened to be a drug addict and an armed robber, and he was my hero. And all the rest of the family was kind of hard-working laborers, construction, machismo, and it was a lot to put on a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, And Gilbert, my uncle, he was just cool, and I can remember before I was 5, 6, I guess. We used to go, and we had a 38 Chevy. It was my grandfather's, and he would tell me count the songs because they didn't have a clock. So we'd go up to somebody's house, and he'd whistle, and they'd come out, and they'd say, "Give me 2," and he would roll 2 joints and hand them 2 joints. They'd give him money, and he'd say, "How many songs?" That's 4 songs. So each song was about 3 minutes, so we knew the time, how long we had the car, and that was like really my first, I guess, drug deal. And I just hung with Gilbert, and he was just fun. And that's how I got into the whole deal, but I think I would have gotten into it anyway, it's just part of the growing up, the lifestyle that I lived, where I lived. And that's what happened.
And then making that transition to being an actor.
Well, when I came out of prison in 1969, I was actually a drug counselor for quite a while. And I worked as a drug counselor. And then I was trying to be extras for an extra $50 or something. And one kid I was working with, I went with him on this one film, and I ran into a guy I knew in the penitentiary, a guy named Eddie Bunker, who was a prolific writer, right? Now, I didn't know this. I just knew him as an armed robber. And he asked me if I was still boxing. He said, "Danny, I saw you win the lightweight and the welterweight title up in Quinton." And I said, "No, I'm just, I train. I'm 40 years old, man." He said, "We need somebody to train one of the actors how to box." So I started training this actor. I asked him, "What's it pay?" And he said, $320 a day. And I was there to make $50. And so when he said $320 a day, I said, "How bad do you want this guy beat up?" I thought he wanted me to beat somebody up, and I wasn't making $320 a week as a drug counselor. And so I started training an actor named Eric Roberts how to box for a movie called Runaway Train. And the director saw me, liked the fact that Eric would do whatever I told him to do, and told me that I would be in this movie. And so I started making $320 a day. And when I did it, I put 320. I was adding up all the 320s. I didn't know about OT and about meal penalties. And so I made a lot more money than I had figured. So I split and I run to go cash his check before they realized. And Eddie stopped me. "Where are you going?" "Man, they screwed up, Holmes. They gave me a lot more money." Now, so I was it. I'm an actor. And I happened to get a SAG card. And I've been doing pretty well ever since.
Yeah, it's interesting for 2 reasons. One is because I feel like a lot of people want to get entertainment to be kind of seen, maybe to get famous, but you were drawn to it for 2 things. One, right place, right time, right? And 2 is you're kind of drawn to it by money.
Yeah.
And so I thought that's interesting because, when even writing a book or acting, especially in your early career, it's not like you could make a lot of money, but you were able to do that early on and make that transition. And then there was probably a point where you're like, I kind of like this. And then now you've been in so many movies.
You know what, Daniel, let me tell you something. It's really strange, but it's kind of like people say, why do you do why do you do that movie? You know, the B movie or something. I said, you don't understand. It's that movie's supporting maybe 80 people, you know, and putting food on the table. I've never, a bad movie is in the eye of the beholder. You know what I mean? It's like, you might not like that movie, but somebody else thought it was great, you know, and so a lot of the movies I've done are like student films, you know, and they bought me lunch, you know what I mean? And first time directors that needed a name to get some funding. So I love the work. I love doing it, you know, and I think one of the things that you have to have is, wait a minute, but it supports the family.
Yes,
So
that's
it's a
such an
job.
interesting point. I don't think a lot of people know how many people are involved in a movie, right? So you're educating people right now. And, you know, they see the people who are on the, you know, who are the actors and actresses. They don't see the people behind the scene. And so it's probably a level of empathy that you developed potentially when you were in prison growing up. Along these lines, how did your struggles with addiction, crime, and abusive childhood inspire your acting roles and serve as motivation for your career?
Well, I got to say that a lot of the times I remember this one director said, okay, Danny, I want you to kick in this door, and they're all stunt people. So just kind of, let's freewheel this. Let's see how this is. So I kick in this door, and this girl jumps up, and I throw the gun in front of her, and she falls back, put a gun on another guy, and yell, I'm robbing a poker game. And I got this big guy down. I said, you know what? Move. You know, I haven't killed anybody all day. You know, and there's this cut. You could, Danny, where did you study? I said, Vaughn's, Safeway, Sears. You know, I mean, all these markets we robbed. And so he like didn't get it, you know. But I think my life before was just a character study. I did a film that Eddie Bunker wrote. It was called Straight Time. It was a movie by Dustin Hoffman did it. And in it, me and Willem Dafoe and the crew that I was in, we all got loaded on heroin. And people that I knew that knew heroin that had been addicted said, you were loaded. And it was like, I remember, you know what I mean? It's like, no, I was acting. Now you were loaded. And it's like, so if I could convince a heroin addict that I did pretty good, you know? So I think my life before was just a character study of what I was going to do in the movies.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And I could see that a lot of actors have to take the time to do those character studies, but you were already sort of that character without even knowing it at the time in the early days. And talking about your, you know, long-term movie career, you've had hundreds of acting credits. How have you been able to separate the person people see in movies from who you are as a person? I think
the people around me, my support system, keep it pretty well grounded. I got 3 kids. My son's a director now, and he directed me in a film that he wrote called From a Son. And it was so funny because I'm this dad who's looking for his son who we think died. I'm looking all over, oh my God. And every time I would get to be too tough. You know, instead of saying, you know, have you seen my son? He goes, here, sir, do you want my wallet? You know, he would always, I go, shut up, man. Dad, you're I don't know if you're robbing my wallet. And so I would have to get back to being the dad, you know, instead of the actor, you know, I think some of the best stuff I've ever done.
I love that. And speaking of your family, why is it so difficult to help your children with the struggles they're experiencing when you've already been through them?
I think one of the reasons is a lot of times your kids don't want to hear it from you. You know, it's like, so I thank God for my support system, Mario Castillo, and it's unbelievable the way the universe or God, whatever you want to call, sets things up. I met Mario Castillo in 1991 in San Quentin. I was doing a movie called Blood In, Blood Out. He was a resident. He says he was busted in San Quentin, and we became friends on the streets when he got out, and then he got sick, and I told him, you can't work, so work for me, So he came to work for me, and he lost his house. He was dying. He got a liver transplant, so he's living with me, and then he got better, and now he became my assistant, and when my kid was out using and I couldn't find him, I'd be in Germany, I'd be calling all over, and I'd call him, Mario, see if you can find Gilbert. He was a master at it. And 3 hours later, my son said, hey, Dad, I'm all right, man. Hey, stop sending Mario. No, just let me, call me. I told you, call me. I just don't want you to die, you little shit. And then when my son almost died, man, Mario was there, snatched him up, and so it's funny how it worked out. So my support system, I have cauliflower ears, and it's so hard to keep anything in them. But my support system is what saved my kid's life, and my daughter is the same way. My secretary, Mary, my support system, Renee, who had a recovery center, bang, they, save. So thank God. It's like, thank God I knew enough to know that maybe they can't hear it from me.
Yeah, that's really smart, especially because, people are always looking for other people's opinions, and there's like a conflicting biased view of if it's your parent or your sibling, but if they hear it from a third-party source or multiple sources, which is even better probably, then they're more likely to believe it. And you as a father probably gain more credibility because they're like, oh, I heard it from one or two or three other people. So what my dad is saying must be legitimate.
Yeah.
That's great. And what's your best piece of career advice?
My best piece of career advice is, if you're going as an actor, don't try to be a comedian, and don't try to be a do-all, and don't try to be just get on that movie set and just be there to do your job, and make sure that when they ask you to do your job, you do the best you can. And that's the way you shine. The guy that's trying to be a comedian, the guy that's trying to be helpful, it's like, you don't need it. Try to be the best you can be, because everyone else is taken.
I love that. And I think based on an old quote too, I always say, be yourself, because everyone else is taken, and replicas don't sell for as much. That was in my first book, actually.
Whoa, hold it. I got it.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true though. And stop trying to be what you think other people want you to be, because you don't even know it for sure sometimes, and start to be more of yourself, because people will cling to that authenticity, and it's something you've really benefited from. And it's just great advice. So thank you so much for being on the show, Danny.
Thank you, man. God bless you.